This regular meeting of the Waco Independent School Board is hereby called to order. All items which may be discussed or voted upon this evening have been posted as required by state law. Really want to extend a warm welcome to everyone present and to our television viewers. The board's purpose is to set goals, listen to reports of the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, and personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. We are not here to make management decisions or solve problems of individuals. Management is the responsibility of the superintendent and her staff. I ask that you would please turn your cell phones to silent if you have not already done so. And we really do appreciate the time you've taken to join us and for your interest in Waco Independent School District. Esta Junta Regular de Waco ISD está convocada. Les extiendo un amable bienvenidos a todos los que están presentes y los que nos observan por televisión. También les quiero compartir que todas las conferencias están disponibles en la página de Waco ISD YouTube el lunes después de la conferencia. En esa página pueden escoger su idioma, así toda la información que fue discutida está disponible para todos. Por favor, apagar su teléfono celular. Les agradecemos el tiempo que comparten con nosotros y su interés en Waco ISD. We as the board hold to ethical standards. We have hold to honor and conduct. So we as the board will tell the truth. We as the board will share our views while working for consensus. We as the board will respect the majority decision as a decision of the board. We as the board will base our decisions on fact rather than supposition, opinion, or public favor. It is my honor to recognize University High School senior band student Nick Ashby for his precedent-setting performance in November at the Percussive Arts Society International Convention in Indianapolis, in Indiana. That was in November. It was probably pretty chilly. Yeah. Nick was not only the first student from Waco ISD to ever attend the international event, but he also earned first place in the Waco High Tenors Division at the contest, beating out hundreds of drummers from around the world. That is impressive. Nick is a dynamic percussionist, and we are extremely proud of all the hard work and efforts he has put into his distinguished award. It is my honor and joy to introduce Nick Ashby. He will be performing the Carol of the Quads. Mr. Ashby. Bravo, Mr. Ashby. Bravo. Wonderful job. Thank you so much for that. My daughter and I actually went to Guitar Center this past weekend, and there's no way we could have done anything even slowly like that. So just very impressive. Thank you so much, Mr. Ashby. Congratulations. Yes. Okay, item number 2, public comments. Do we have anyone signed up? Okay, thank you. We will move on to item number 3, moments of silence and pledge of allegiance. So if you please pause with me as we take time for prayer, contemplation, reflection, and meditation. Okay, we'll move on to special recognition, our pledge leaders.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board would meet me in front of the dais.
Good evening, school board members, and happy February. I want to introduce you our pledge leaders tonight as they hail from Tennyson Middle School and Atlas Academy. 6th grader Amaya McLennan. Amaya loves reading, crocheting, is a competitive gymnast, and loves studying her Bible. She plans to become a businesswoman when she grows up. She's active in the student council. She loves to cook, and she is a representative for the 6th grade. She is active in theater arts at school and also has acted in productions with the Waco Theater. She is Amaya McLennan. Our additional pledge leader tonight is Atlas student Brooklyn Hopkins. She enjoys coloring art, and her favorite subject is English. She is also in the 6th grade and attends Atlas Academy. She plays in a band with the clarinet. She says she did it because her brother did it. So, she attends Highland Baptist Church. She enjoys going to movies with her friends and playing arcade games. Thank you so much to Amaya and Brooklyn for leading our pledge tonight. Well, you alluded to it a little bit earlier, Madam President, but we are beyond excited to announce that the University High School student and member of the U.S. Mighty Trojan Band, Nicholas Ashby, captured first place in the Percussive Art Society International Convention's High School Tenors Division, naming him as the best high school percussionist drummer in the entire world. You were able to witness his high skill level on the drums. He makes it look easy, but it certainly is not. And he presented you a shortened version tonight of his competition solo. So it was much longer than that in competition, and he went through multiple rounds. But ladies and gentlemen, the best high school percussionist in the world, University High School senior Nick Ashby. We would now like to introduce Waco ISD's Parents as Teachers program. Parents as Teachers program in Waco ISD is endorsed as a national Blue Ribbon affiliate and has maintained the Blue Ribbon status every year since 2017 for its high-quality services for families with children who are prenatal and those not yet enrolled in school. The Waco ISD Parents as Teachers program includes home visits, group connections, child screenings, and connections to community resources. Congratulations to Waco ISD's Parents as Teachers program for being named one of the best programs in the entire nation for the 6th consecutive year. And now we present University High School Athletic Coordinator and Head Football Coach, Kayron Johnson. Coach Johnson has been named the Texas High School Coaches Association Regional Coach of the Year among all 5A school districts. The THSCA Award recognizes coaches across the state of Texas for their exemplary achievements in the 2023 UIL football season. This past season, Coach Johnson and his players achieved, and I'm going to have you stay right back up there, please, because we want you to know what these achievements are, because they only pick one in all the 5A districts, and it was Coach Johnson. This year, he and his players together achieved a 7-4 record, district runner-up, by-district finalist, 20 all-district players, 5 all-Centex players, 2 all-state players, 13 academic all-district players, and 1 academic all-state player. When visiting with Coach Johnson, he was very quick to point out to me that in his words, I have unbelievable kids, and I could not accomplish anything without them. Congratulations, Coach Kayron Johnson. And our community partner could not be with us tonight, but we'll have their picture there on the screen, and that is HEB. So congratulations to HEB, our Waco ISD February Community Partner of the Month. HEB partners with Waco ISD in a myriad of ways to include a grant for Waco ISD's Heroes Academy, surprise lunches and school supplies for elementary staff, cooking demonstrations to promote healthy eating choices, title sponsor of the Waco ISD Education Foundation Celebrity Chef event, and much, much more. So thank you to HEB for its continued support of our students and our staff. And that's all we have, trustees. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Huh? I know. Amazing. Okay, we will move on to lots of great things. I heard the word world best and best in Texas 5A. I think those are all amazing accomplishments and so proud. So proud of our kids and so proud of our staff. We will move on to item 5A, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Kincannon.
All right. Well, good evening. Let me get this microphone over here, or maybe. There we go. All right. Each February, we celebrate the stories and voices of African Americans, past and present. And we do this by providing engaging experiences that connect our students and families to the political, economic, social, and cultural impact of African Americans. And there is evidence of this in the student work hanging in our hallways, the videos that our students have shared on social media, and through special campus events planned in celebration of Black History Month. Tonight, Dean Highland Elementary and Cesar Chavez Middle School are each hosting Black History Month events. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m., Tennyson Middle School will host a special program honoring African Americans in the arts. And next week on Wednesday, Waco High School will host its annual program, which will feature singing, dancing, spoken word, and other talented talents showcased by our students. There'll be 2 performances of Waco High School's program, one during the day for students to attend, and then a community celebration on Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. I want to thank all of our teachers and campus staff who have honored the stories and voices of the past in ways that align to the district's mission and goals. And I believe we had almost every secondary school with a program this year. So really nice job of honoring Black History Month. Next item we have is on elementary and middle school academic UIL. And that meet was held on January 27th. It was a huge success, thanks to Larry Carpenter and all of our dedicated campus and district staff, along with community volunteers who served as judges, and even our own trustee, Mr. Patton, I think was judging as well. Thank you for that. We had more than 250 students who participated in 20 different events, with Hillcrest PDS and Lake Air Montessori Magnet claiming the district championships for elementary and middle schools. And it was just fun to get to see the kids as they were getting their awards, and they were so happy and cheering each other on. And it was just a great time. So really thankful for that. And thank you, Mr. Carpenter. I think he was here for all the work that went into that experience for our students, and to all of the teachers who organized and participated this year. Also want to announce that at the end of January, Wendy Sled accepted the promotion to serve as our new Executive Director for Communications. Wendy has 30 years of professional experience in journalism, communications, and event planning, and as a recognized state leader in school public relations. And we're really pleased that she was able to fill this critical role in the district. Thank you, Wendy. I do want to let the board know that we will not be filling Wendy's previous role of communications coordinator due to anticipated budget deficits. So she's got a big role, and we're thankful for her for taking that on, and she knew that when she took the job. So thank you again. Next item I have is teacher incentive allotment validation. We did get validated again this year. We're super excited about that. We're going to give out approximately $2.5 million in incentive pay to our teachers who were TIA, or teacher incentive allotment designated. This is the 3rd consecutive year that we have been validated since the first data collection year that was 2020-21, and for a second year in a row for the number of recognized teachers that has more than doubled. There were 110 teachers validated in the spring of 23. 4 of those have moved up a level for this year, and there are 3 levels, and the higher the level, the more money you get as a part of that designation. And we had 80 new teachers designated for this past year.
Amazing.
Yes. So these are our best of the best. They're skilled teachers, and they go above and beyond to complete the validation process. And so we're just really excited to get to celebrate them this year. And we're thankful for the success of their students. And I personally want to thank Dr. Gutierrez for leading the way with this work, and our Director of Strategic Evaluation Systems and Support, Dr. Vanessa Ruiz, who does the day-to-day work of that program. So appreciate you guys. All right, the not-so-fun stuff, budget planning. So we're in a really good position. We have a strong financial position in Waco ISD. We have a superior rating on the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. As we talked about last month when Ms. Davis gave her report, and we had a clean audit again this year. You all received that report recently as well. We have a general fund balance of $49.7 million. That represents about 32.4% of our annual operating budget. That's really healthy. Our policy says that we should be around 20%. So we're in good shape. And so with that said, we are in a position to manage the budget challenges that are ahead of us, and we've got some big ones. And they're real. I keep telling my staff, these are real, right? Don't ask for anything because this is a real crisis. And we're still working on projections for next year. I know Ms. Davis is working through that process and has been since the audit was completed. And so I don't have all of the numbers and specific information for you yet, but I want this on your radar, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that we're anticipating a deficit that could be in excess of $10 million if we don't get any new money from the state for this next school year. And we're not alone in the budget crisis, as all districts across the state are facing similar situations. For example, just to name a few, Spring Branch ISD recently announced a $35 million deficit. Keller ISD is looking at a $28 million deficit. Brownsville ISD has said that they're facing a $20 million deficit, and you may have seen some others in headlines. And I bet Ms. Davis could rattle off a few more because we've been talking about it. So we are not alone. And I think the issues that we're facing, if I were to name them, include declining enrollment. That's a trend of that across the state as well. Inflation, the loss of ESSER funding, and then there's no new money from the state. And I personally say that it's disheartening that we've had 4 special sessions of the Texas legislature this year, and none of them have produced additional funding for public schools. And there's been no increase in the basic allotment since 2019 for public schools. So it's been dry. And we have had to do some really hard things during some really hard times with no new money, other than the ESSER. And so I want the board to know that we are planning to cut at least $5 million out of the budget for next year, and that could change based on Ms. Davis's projections after she is able to finish working through her process. And most of that cut is going to have to be in staffing because that's where we spend the majority of our money. So we did do a hiring freeze on paraprofessionals, not all. We're hiring the ones certainly that we need in special ed classrooms, the most critical. And we're doing that to position ourselves so that if we make some cuts, we have places to put people, and we don't fill all of those positions. And so that's it. That's kind of where we are for now. We'll continue to talk to you about that throughout the spring, and next month, Ms. Davis will give a report to the board. Happy to answer any questions on that one.
Yes, Mr. Patton, thank you.
So you were saying that we're anticipating up to a $10 million deficit unless we get funds from TEA. Is that foreseeable in this coming year at all?
Yes. Yes, for next year, for this coming school year. And I said in excess of $10 million. So.
Oh, I had
Yeah.
up to, maybe I was.
Well, maybe it'll come in lower, but I don't think so. Yes. Ms. Davis, do you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't see it happening. We've had 4 special sessions, and I haven't heard of any other sessions that are going to happen, so I don't see any new money until the 2025 legislative session, but I could be wrong.
This is pitiful what the state is doing to public schools. It is absolutely pitiful.
It's political.
It's interesting. One of the, I sit on a board, legislative board for Association of Realtors in town, and we interviewed all of the candidates that are running for our representative that represents Waco ISD. And one of them said flat out, this isn't a taxing issue, this is a funding issue, and our schools are massively underfunded. And I asked him if he could repeat that, because he will likely win this race. So I've got him on record making that statement, which is going against what the governor says. We cannot make up these deficits by raising taxes. It doesn't work that way. We can't raise them by, we can't cut it just by cutting people and programs. It's a funding issue.
Nor is selling cookies on the
Yeah,
corner
it's
gonna
an
raise funds.
underfunding issue, and we just don't get a big enough allotment from the state to make what we do happen well.
And to have the government sit during those 4 special sessions that were called, saying that they could give up to a 20% pay raise across the board to every teacher if we would only vote for vouchers. That is just keeping public schools a hostage
Blackmail?
to public vote.
Yeah. Hold-
That's ridiculous.
I think we were at a state of the state, we were at a chamber meeting or a conference, I don't know what it was called, but it was Glenn Haggard who was there. And he was up on stage talking about how Texas economy is doing gangbusters. They are busting at the seams with money and just trying to figure out what to do with this money, because he's told in verbatim, he said, we have $31 billion of excess funds that we need to figure out what to do with. And that does not include our rainy day fund. And so there is a reason school boards are nonpartisan races, and that's because politics needs to stay out of children's education. And when I see a government holding hostage the education and the quality education of children, I take offense to that. Because this is the future of our community, whether you want to look it square in the face or not, this is our future. And to underfund children's education should be criminal. And I think that we have a duty to make sure that our voice is heard through our votes. And that's all I'll say with that.
Great, thank you. All right, I want to make sure that's on everyone's radar, and I want to say it again, these are real deficits. There's no magic pot of money to
Can I just say
pay
that
for things.
we address that by voting, right? We don't talk about who to vote for, but these decisions affect our children because of votes that will be cast in November. And I would encourage everybody that votes to find out if public schools is a priority for the person you vote for. There's a gentleman just south of town who I will call incredibly conservative, who's done a great job, but is being no longer supported by our governor because he doesn't believe in vouchers. I call him incredibly conservative, but he's not for vouchers. And so,
He's being targeted.
yeah, we decide how this happens in November. We either support public schools or we support vouchers.
And,
You can't
and
do
in
both.
March for primaries. It's so important that we get the message out that voting in primary elections in March, or now the primaries are going on, that your primary vote really does determine what you get to say in November by the people you get to select now. Please go and vote in those primaries and vote pro-school.
I will say, Jonathan, to kind of echo what you're saying, but I would say more than voting in favor of public school, I would say it's voting in favor of kids,
Yeah.
flat out. You're voting in favor of helping kids in your community, all kids. And so, yeah, anyway, Dr. Kincannon, transportation.
All right, next item is an update on transportation. And I just wanted to communicate this evening that we're continuing to transition to a district-operated transportation department. And as I mentioned last month, Dr. Edison and Dr. Gutierrez are facilitating a committee that is made up of representatives, staff representatives from departments and campuses across the district, and they've met about 3 times now. 3 times, and their goal, of course, is to provide input into the work that we're doing regarding transportation operations and guidelines for the future, and evaluating school and start and end times for next school year. That's a mouthful. So they have been looking at a 3-tier bus system and what that means for start and end times for school. And for us, that means the ability to maximize the use of our bus drivers so they can run 3 routes instead of 2. Means we need less bus drivers overall. It makes it more efficient for the school district. And as you all know, getting bus drivers is an ongoing issue for us, and allows us to provide more reliable services for our families. So there are 2 options that have been developed in terms of bell schedules for next year. And we'll be taking those to our parents and to our staff for a vote. And so we'll be sending that out shortly. So wanted you all to know about that. Should go out in early March. You have a timeline on that, Dr. Gutierrez? Next week. Okay. And so we'll keep you posted on that.
What type of feedback have you gotten from principals and teachers so far?
Well, no one wants to change, right? No one wants a different time. So everyone wants the perfect bell schedule, right? They don't want to get there too early. They don't want to stay too late. And so, but somebody has to for it to work. And so that's the question. So our options, one of them is static, I think, and they mix up the middle and high school the most, I think. You might speak to that better than I, Dr. Gutierrez. I don't have them in front of me.
That's a 4:30 and a 5 o'clock finish time?
There was a 4:45, I believe, a 4:30 and a 4:45.
4:45.
Makes it hard for athletics. It's hard for getting kids to events if you're having to bus them. On the flip side, you don't want elementary kids at home by themselves in the afternoon or in the mornings. So it's tricky balance. And so we're going to have to do it. It's, we did it at Kendrick already. We made a change, and it's working. But if we want to get better with transportation, we're going to have to go to a 3-tier system.
Is the sole issue number of drivers, or is it number of buses as well?
It's not number of buses, it's number of drivers, and it is time between routes. So ideally, our consultants would like to have an hour between routes. We can do it in 45 minutes with the 3-tier system, and I think the 2 options have 45 minutes. In a perfect world, we'd have an hour, but that's the problem. And one of the things that we realized through the work was that when we extended the school day to get the extra planning days, we added 15 minutes, which actually hurt transportation because they got 15 minutes less to run their routes. So some of that was self-inflicted harm. But so those are the issues, really, drivers and times.
If we don't want to change, how many drivers will it take to close that gap? Because we either have people sign up or we change times. You know how many drivers it would take? More?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Total?
Total.
Do you know how many we have? Oh,
So short, about 20 something. But it's an ongoing problem with shortages. I mean, it has been for the last several years and probably before that. So we could bring you a full report on that if you'd like some more information on it. But we would like to go ahead and get the vote out to the parents and the staff members just to see where we land on that.
How many buses do we have? Do you know?
We have about 100 buses.
I wonder if it's worth one public call to say, when we make the presentation of this is our alternative, if we don't, can we call dads or moms or grandparents who might have the ability to get a CDL, and because it's that easy. We either get 40% more bus drivers or we change the schedule, and parents don't want to make the change, then let's get a few to be bus drivers.
How many, sorry, Mr. Grant, were you finished?
I'm finished.
Okay. How many students do we have that utilize bus services? And I'm not talking about athletics, just getting picked up to go to school and then sent back. Do we know that?
We do know that. We just don't remember it because we've sat in a meeting and looked at it. How about we bring you back a full report?
That sounds great. Once you get the survey out and all of that, you can kind of let us know.
Yeah, we've studied all of that in our meetings, and we know it's not a huge number, but it's enough. We have to provide transportation for our kids, and I've heard that this district has needed to go to a 3-tier system for a while, and we haven't done it. I think it's been a topic of conversation. So, if we don't do it now, we're not ever going to do it. In my mind, right? We either do it or we don't. And so, if there's a distaste for doing it, then we're going to have to figure out how to get bus drivers.
Does that mean all elementary schools will start at the same time, all middle schools will start at the same time?
Correct. You don't have to do it that way, but the two options are. Yep. Hard one. That's a hard one. That's as hard as budget. Well, maybe not. Maybe not as hard as budget. Okay. Any more questions on that one?
Do we have any charter buses? Do we own any charter buses?
We don't own charter buses, but we lease them from time to time for trips.
Just thinking of long-distance trips and
We've
long
had to
games.
use more charter buses since the pandemic when we weren't able to get drivers than in the past, but it's very expensive to do that.
Incredibly expensive.
Okay. All right, we'll bring you back a report on that. Last item I have is Transformation Waco transition planning, and we are also continuing to focus on that as we push to next school year. Yesterday afternoon, Dr. McDurham and I announced Denise Wooden as the principal of GW Carver Middle School. As you know, she's currently the associate principal at University High School. She has 17 years of experience in education. 15 of those 17 years are at the middle school level. So she knows middle school population very well. She's a U.S. Army military spouse and the daughter of a military veteran, and she herself served for a decade in the U.S. Air Force, and she brings leadership, mentorship, and selfless service to the school, and we've absolutely witnessed that at University High School and been impressed with her work. And so we have high expectations for her and our students and the staff, and just appreciate that she's here, that she has the experience at the middle school, and we think she'll be an asset to the Carver Middle School community as we continue to transition. So for the next 2 weeks, she'll be talking to staff and just observing, and I don't know that she's capable of just observing. She's engaged with students right away as she was there, but she will begin full-time on March the 11th at Carver.
Thank you, Dr. Kincannon. We follow Robert's Rules of Order, so I have gone ahead and put a couple sheets of paper on there as presenters are coming up to give their presentation. If you have a question, if you wouldn't mind kind of writing down your question until the presentation is finished. And then in Robert's Rules of Order, it just helps when you can signal to me and then I can acknowledge you, or you can so Keith is going to have to be my eyes on this side, and Jose, you'll have to be my eyes on this side. If you'll let them know, I can call on you, and then you can ask your questions of the presenter. I think it just helps things go a little bit more orderly, but I put paper there for you in case you had questions. So if you have a question, we want to hear it, but if you would just get my attention, and then I'll acknowledge you, and we'll move from there. Okay, we're going to go on to item number 6, information items and reports. Mr. Grant, do you have any discussion?
I do not.
Mr. Davis? No. Mr. Vidania?
No.
Mr. Guillory?
No.
Mr. Ochoa? Mr. Patton?
No.
Ms. Davis, I want to say it's so nice to see the decrease in the walk-in cooler that has been completed. It was long on there for a really, really long time. Okay, moving on to consent agenda, consider and take appropriate action. Mr. Grant, do you want anything pulled from
Do not.
consent? Mr. Davis, would you like anything pulled? Mr. Vidania, would you like anything pulled?
No.
Mr. Guillory, would you like anything pulled?
Just looking at 7I.
7I. Okay. Oh gosh, my pen doesn't work. If you, Mr. Ochoa, would you like anything pulled? And Mr. Patton, would you like anything pulled?
No.
Okay, great. I will entertain a motion to accept consent agenda as presented, except for item 7I.
I move.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guillory. Is there any discussion, Mr. Grant?
No.
Any discussion, Mr. Davis? No. Any discussion, Mr. Vidania? No. Any discussion, Mr. Guillory?
No.
Any discussion, Mr. Ochoa? No. Any discussion, Mr. Patton?
No.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, item number 7, grow your own instructor stipends. Mr. Guillory.
Just wanted to get an update on the progress of the program and just, yeah, because I know we've talked about it in the past and how we're growing our own and bringing them up into principalship roles and things like that and seeing what we have in the pipeline and
Great.
what's coming here.
I appreciate that. This item, I'll, come on up, Dr. Lopez. I'll start and you can fill in any gaps for me. How's that? These costs are related to 4 instructors who will be facilitating online courses for the candidates who were selected for Grow Our Own program. These are paraprofessionals who want to be teachers that will be assisting with beginning in our classrooms next year. And we have, I believe, 16 of them. 17 who have been, we had about 22 apply, and we've selected 17, and they're taking these online courses this semester. And so we needed someone to proctor those courses, and so that's what we're doing, is paying them to do that. And we'd be happy to introduce them to you at a later date. Those candidates were really excited about it. It's good just continuing the work. Yeah. But these are for teachers.
It's for teachers, yeah.
Those, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Ochoa.
We're providing them some sort of support, I'm assuming, as they go through those courses, because I know they're not fun or easy.
Right.
Yeah.
They're being facilitated by our folks, going through our curriculum to really work with them prior to them even starting within our classrooms. So giving them a head start, so they are being supported that way. Our goal is to have a coach to support the 15 as they move through their internship.
Well, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Patton.
This is going to get really difficult for me. This was meant for
But
me. I
you know what,
it was.
Mr. Patton, you did a great job. Thank you.
I
doing a
waited
good
to
job.
the end. Will as they go through their internship, will they have someone that will work with them daily or weekly that checks in on them, helps monitor lessons and progress in the class, and observes them, gives them mentor feedback, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's the way we've designed it.
And have we hired that, or when will we hire that?
We are working through that process right now because, of course, the next piece is as they move through, and when we hire them, as you recall, we're giving them $10,000 less salary, and those monies will be used to coordinate for those coaches that we hire.
Will it be one coach, or?
We're going to start out with one, and as it grows, we'll continue to get more in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Guillory.
All right, you probably answered this. How many of those 17 were paraprofessionals before they entered this program?
They're all paraprofessionals.
Oh, okay.
So we'll have to hire 17 more.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Grant.
Were all those paraprofessionals in Waco ISD already or in different districts?
They have been here.
Fantastic.
Okay. Well, I'm really excited about the program. Oh, yes, Mr. Davis.
I just wanted to clarify the stipend that we're approving is coming out of the $10,000 that was deducted from the salary for the paraprofessionals. Is that where this?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No,
Okay.
so you're only approving $3,000 for this spring, and that'll come, I believe, out of general fund.
Gotcha. And then moving forward, it will come out of that salary of the paraprofessionals.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I will entertain a motion to, and I don't have the exact language in front of me. If anyone can get to it first, I will entertain a motion on item 7I, grow our own instructor stipends. Okay, thank you, Mr. Guillory. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Is there any discussion, Mr. Grant?
No.
Is there any discussion, Mr. Davis? Is there any discussion, Mr. Vidania?
No.
Any discussion, Mr. Guillory?
No.
Any discussion, Mr. Ochoa? Any discussion, Mr. Patton?
No, ma'am.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 8, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding sign-on bonuses for certified teachers, counselors, librarians, library media specialists, nurses, and police officers. Dr. Lopez. We just made you walk extra steps on that one, sorry.
Need the exercise. Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Cannon, members of the board. Although we've talked about the state not supporting our teachers, you all certainly do, and you did last year. If you recall, February of 2023, we were here at the same time, and you were approving sign-on bonuses then. So we are coming back to ask you to approve sign-on bonuses for all new to the district fully certified teachers, counselors, librarians, library media specialists, registered nurses, and police officers. Out of the 974 teachers that we have on staff now, if you recall, we, through the sign-on bonuses, we were able to get 147 certified teachers with an average experience, if I remember, of 9.6 years. So that was really good. One of the really, really good things about the sign-on bonus from last year is that, if you recall, in 2020, 22, 23 school year, yes, we had 101 emergency permits that year. This year, we only have 56. So that's a really good thing for us. So we're asking you to approve a $5,000 sign-on bonus for fully certified or eligible for certification pending graduation classroom teachers, counselors, and librarians, or library media specialists hired on or before July 1st. The sign-on bonus will require a commitment to work for Waco ISD for 1 year. Those hired with an intern or probationary certification will not qualify for the sign-on bonus. A sign-on bonus of $5,000 to police officers hired by August 1st of 2024. A sign-on bonus of $2,500 for registered nurses hired by August 1st of 2024. Upon approval of the board, by the board, the district will begin to advertise these sign-on bonuses for the 2024-2025 school year. We would ask that you approve the sign-on bonuses as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Yes, sorry. Are there, I think we're going to put it in motion and then we'll do the discussion once it's in motion. So we need a first and a second and then we can discuss. If that's okay with everyone, and we'll take a vote after.
I move to approve the 24-25 sign-on bonus.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vidania. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Now the item is in action. So, Mr. Grant, is there any discussion, or are there any discussion on this? Any questions?
No.
Okay. Mr. Davis? Okay. Mr. Vidania?
No.
Mr. Guillory?
Do have a question.
Okay, great.
So with this, what does this look like in other districts, and is this competitive, in comparison, to other districts and with their?
It's hard for me to.
Nobody has any money to do this.
Because I know last year this was a.
Yeah, this is a big deal. This is a really nice sign-on bonus for teachers. It made a difference for us last year. We had more ESSER money than a lot of districts because of the number of students that we serve and the economically disadvantaged status of our students. And so we have the money to do this again, and it will boost us again for one more year. So we'd like to do that. We are waiting to hear on balances for ESSER funds to see what's remaining for the rest of the year. We're going to close out the books at the end of the year. we want to bring some more retention bonuses back like we did last year for some other positions, but we're just not sure yet on where we're at on some of that funding, but we know we have the funding for this, and so we want to continue it. Yeah, and it may not be, like, I think you might be asking about police officers. There are some local police for, like, I think Waco City of Waco Police Department has a bigger sign-on bonus. I don't know about nurses, but for teachers, certainly, I haven't seen anything like this in the area for teachers.
All right.
Okay. Mr. Ochoa, is there any discussion, any comment?
Yeah, just curious, how many librarians are we short throughout the district?
Oh. It's really hard for me to say offhand.
Yeah, it's, I mean, not a big deal. I was
We
just-
have some at, I don't know how many Transformation Waco campuses need one, but when we added librarians, they didn't add at their campuses, so we're going to want librarians there. So there may be a couple there, and then it's going to just depend on turnover.
Each of the elementary schools at Transformation Waco did not have a librarian. They had a library aide. Not the same at Carver. Carver did have a librarian and a library aide.
So it's the 3 elementaries then. Yep.
I have a question. You said 2,000 for nurses? Is that correct?
2,500.
2,500? For nurses, is that a LVN, RN?
Registered nurse.
Registered nurse.
For
The move in
RNs.
the district has been to move to registered nurses.
That's awesome.
So RNs only.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Dr. Lopez, I want to say thank you so much for all the work that you and your team have done. I think seeing certified teachers coming back into the classroom with 9 years of experience is huge, huge for our district. And I know it has been a heavy lift. And so I just wanted to say thank you to you and your team. Really appreciative on behalf of not only the board, but just our students. So thank you so much. So with that, I will, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you so much, Dr. Lopez. Okay, item number 9, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding amending the 2023-2024 instructional calendar due to the April 8th, 2024 eclipse. Hot topic here.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Buchanan, and members of the board. I'm sure we're all aware of the total lunar eclipse that's coming on April 8th, and many of the districts around us have closed, Midway being the last, which was we were sort of waiting because we really wanted to have school on April 8th because we feel like this is the best place for our kids to be because we can offer a really good educational experience. But there are some concerns with the influx of visitors to the area. And at the time the eclipse ends and folks trying to get out of the area will really run up against when our buses would be running, and then as well as the stress that the city's afraid of that will put on our emergency management systems and those types of things with just all the extra people. So we are now trying to follow along and make sure our kids are home and safe. And so we're asking that we trade our bad weather day, which was April 15th, for April 8th. So we did have enough minutes to not trade, but we feel that having, that day of school is important. And so what we would still do is offer lessons to our kids. Many of our campuses have already attended the training with Baylor that they provided tons of free resources and lessons to help our teachers integrate it into the curriculum. And then for those who haven't, they gave the resources to our science coordinators so that our science coordinators can deliver it on the campuses if the campuses want to do it that way. And so most of our students have received Eclipse glasses, so they'll be able to use those at home and still view that. So what we hope to do is prepare them ahead of time so they'll know what's happening once they're home. Absolutely. So that's what we're thinking. Do you guys have questions about that?
Okay, I will put it in motion and then we'll have discussion about that. So I will entertain a motion.
I move.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Grant, do you have any comments, discussions, questions?
No.
Mr. Davis, do you have any comments, discussions, questions?
Just think we got to keep our kids safe. So I agree.
Okay, great. Mr. Vidania, any comments, questions?
No.
Okay, Mr. Guillory, any
No.
comments, questions? Mr. Ochoa, any comments, questions? Mr. Patton?
We're bumping back testing, is that correct?
Well, this
Could
actually
you explain the testing window, how
Yes.
this impacts that?
is actually helps the testing window, actually. The bad weather day was on a Monday, and so that is a testing week. And so now that testing's online, you have a bigger window to test, but testing is able to begin that week. But with us being out on Monday, we would start on Tuesday. And so actually having school on Monday and still starting testing on Tuesday we're hopeful, will increase our participation rates on that first day of testing. So there's a benefit there as well.
First day of testing is the 16th?
For us, it is.
For us, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. We will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear that our kids have eclipse glasses too. I want some kids going out there and looking with their sunglasses on. Okay, we move on to item number 10, review, discuss student achievement data for academic interventions. Mrs. Parnell. I said that kind of quick. I didn't give you very much of a lead time.
Right, good evening, Dr. Cannon, Madam President, and School Board. I'm Courtney Parnell. I believe I know most of y'all, but I'm excited tonight to talk to you about the Waco ISD academic intervention programs. So just a review, I know I talked about this last year, but it's a lot to understand. Academic intervention, or what we call response to intervention, is usually used as or referred to as RTI. So RTI is a proactive approach providing students supplemental instruction by identifying the students who are at risk using a universal screener and other data points. When we get the data, we use this data to determine what type of intervention the students are going to receive and what tier we put them on. The data is also important because it helps the teachers providing the intervention what skills they're going to target or research. So Waco ISD has an intervention system pyramid, what we like to refer to, an intervention. So you see at the bottom is what we refer to as tier 1, and that's core instruction. And normal percentages typically are about 80% of your students fall within tier 1 or core. Tier 2 is called targeted instruction, and typically about 15% of students fall within tier 2, and then you have your tier 3, which is intensive and individualized, and that's normally about 5% of the population. Waco, we also have what's called specialized instruction. That's your special ed, your 504, your dyslexia, but those students also get the tier intervention. As far as what a tier 1 student looks like, typically they fall within above the 26th percentile when we give the screener. So that's based on the national bell-shaped curve. And so typically these students fall 26th or above. These students have passed STAR, they've passed their TCAs. That instruction is provided by the classroom teacher, and they're using core curriculum, and then of course they provide the differentiation as needed. A tier 2 student typically falls between the 25th to the 10th percentile on the screener. So again, when you're thinking of the bell-shaped curve, these students have failed 1 year of STAR. They're typically 1 to 1.5, 2 years below grade level. And tier 2 is always provided by the classroom teacher. In small groups in the classroom or in our secondary campuses, we provide that in WIN with flexible grouping. Then we have our tier 3 students. Those are students who fall below the 10th percentile on the screener. These are students that have failed 2 or more years. They're typically 2 years below grade level. And we have some students in tier 3 that have never passed STAR before and are 5 to 6 years below grade level. Again, this is provided by an interventionist or a SIT teacher, and this is in a small group setting, and it's very targeted. So just to give you an overall kind of breakdown of what our percentage is in Waco ISD, currently right now we have about 59% students, of our students in tier 1. So again, normally it's about 80%. In Tier 2, and this is for reading, we have 28% of our students served in Tier 2. And we currently have 13% of our students being served in Tier 3. And usually it builds. So if a student's in Tier 1, they're getting Tier 2 from that classroom teacher. If they're in Tier 3, they're getting Tier 2 from the classroom teacher in Tier 1, so it builds. In math, we currently have about 63% of our students in Tier 1, 25% of our students are in Tier 2, and we have 12% of Waco students in Tier 3. So what is Tier 3 intervention? So again, that's intensive instruction. It's provided in a small group setting using explicit instructional techniques. And those are some of the pictures of our SIT teachers this year. In addition to it being small group and explicit, we kind of have 5 principles in the intervention classroom. We want it small group, we want it explicit. We expect them to scaffold those skills based on the data. So you're building the skills that student needs. You're also doing positive behavior supports, and we also expect our SIT teachers to do individual conferencing with our students on their progress. So I'm so proud. We currently this year have 42 reading SIT teachers. We have 30 math SIT teachers, and these teachers are currently funded through State Comp, Title I, and ESSER. And our little logo this year is building on the foundations of success. Because what we're trying to do is look at those skills, figure out those skills that are deficit, and then build that and align it to core. So currently, right now in Waco ISD, as far as Tier 3, in the elementary, we serve 1,037 students for reading. Middle school currently serves 429 for Tier 3 in reading, and the high school currently serves 321 students. So total, those 72 SIT teachers are serving 1,787 students in Tier 3. Tier 3 math, we currently serve 766 math students in elementary. Middle school, we serve 519, and high school, we serve 285. So in total, we're serving 1,570 students. And so that's averaging anywhere from 47 to 50 or so per SIT teacher. So again, what we do is we're looking at growth. That's super important when we look at intervention. So this is the data I pulled this year for y'all. Based on our screeners, we do a screening at the beginning of the year, then we do a screening at the middle of the year, and we do the end of the year. So based on our screening for beginning to middle, we had 368 students move out of Tier 3 to go to Tier 2. Then we had, this is even more exciting, 105 of our students moved from Tier 3 to Tier 1. So again, we're saying that we're closing the gap, that these students are now above the 25th percentile, they're commensurate to their peers on great reading or math proficiency skills, or this was reading. For math, we've had 287 students mid-year move from Tier 3 to Tier 2, and we had 147 students move from Tier 3 to Tier 1.
Yes, Mr. Ochoa, thank you.
Are those numbers for high school and elementary?
Yes, sir. It's
Okay.
all combined.
Okay.
So again, it's really important that we're looking at data. I kind of referenced this. One way we look at data and within the district is to do a screener. We do a beginning of the year screener, a mid-year screener, and end of the year. So this is our growth for our Tier 3 students based from beginning of the year to mid-year. So this is elementary, grades 1 through 5. Overall, in reading, our students have grown 7 months. Again, this is from September to December, so that's a 4-month period. In math, our students also, on average, grew 7 months. So you look at the breakdown. So what I do is I take all the data and I look at all the students and I group them into how many students grew per month. So about 6% of our students grew at least 3 months in reading. We had 34% of our students grow 3 to 6 months in reading. We had 30% of those students grow 6 to 12 months in reading. Again, that's a 3 to 4 month time period. We had 25% of our students grow up to 2 years. We had 4% of our students make growth from 2 to 3 years, And we actually had 1% of our students grow 3 years, and that's at our secondary level. And I'll dig into more of that data in just a minute. In math, again, we have about a 7-month growth average. We had 22% of our students grow 0 to 3 months, 29 grew 3 to 6 months, 19 grew 6 to 12 months. We had 26% of our students grow 1 to 2 years in a 4-month period. 4% of our students grew 2 to 3 years, and we had 1% grow 3 to 3.5 years. That's elementary. Then we get to middle school. Our reading average for all of our students, again, for a 4-month period, was 1 year, 0.2 months. We had 16% of our students grow 0 to 3 months. 21% of our students grew 3 to 6 months. 26% of our students grew 6 to 12 months. 33% of our students at the middle school have grown 1 to 2 years in reading. 2% have grown 2 to 3 years, and then we had 2% grow greater than 3 years. In math, we have about a 9-month gain average. 15% grew 0 to 3, 26 grew 3 to 6, 22% grew 6 to 12, 25% have gained at least 1 to 2 years, 11% of our middle school students have grown 2 to 3 years in math, and then 1% have grown greater than 3. High school, our average reading growth based from September to December. And for high school, we use Star Renaissance, but we also use Reading Plus for reading. We do Renaissance for math, Reading Plus for reading. So based on our Reading Plus data, our overall growth for our high schools are 1.5. We had 12% grow 0 to 3 months, 6% grew 3 to 6, 15% grew 6 to 12, 30% of our students at the high school have grown from 1 to 2 years. 2% have grown 2 to 3, and we have students who have grown 4+ years at the high school.
That's great. Miss Burnell, you can kind of just give us a little bit of the overview. I'm like, the 1.5 years and 4 months is average is impressive. So thank you so much on that.
Math, this is just for our 9th graders, and I'll explain our math lab in a minute, but we serve 9th graders in the math lab. Our average growth is 1 year, 2 months. We have 17% of those students grew 0 to 3 months, 18% grew 3 to 6, 26% have grown 6 to 12, 23% have grown 1 to 2, 14% have grown 2 to 3 years, and we have 2% who have grown 4+ years in a 4-month period. Questions on that?
Yes, Mr. Ochoa. Oh. Thank you. Okay, well then, let's let Mr. Ochoa go first, and then we'll go to you. Okay. Okay, great. Mr. Patton.
Starting back up,
Yes, sir.
you said we have 40-some-odd sit teachers?
We have 72.
I'm sorry.
We have 42 reading, 30 math.
There we go. And how many are funded through ESSER?
We currently have 15 elementary funded through ESSER.
Only 15 elementary, no more middle and high. Great. Does bilingual impact Tier 3?
So this year in conjunction with Grace's department, we hired a SIT bilingual interventionist. And so he covers 3 or 4 campuses based on the data and the needs of the students, serving them in the area.
Does Brazos fall into Tier 2, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 support?
They're Tier 3, but they're not included in this data because we don't have specifically SIT teachers there. They're classroom teachers, the ones that are providing that differentiated instruction, are the ones pulling the small group. So Brazos data is not in here, no, sir.
But they do receive the Tier 3.
We're required by law to do that, but yes, they do.
Okay, so here's where my question comes, one of my big questions. Courtney, this is impressive. Ms. Parnell, this is very impressive. I'm looking at the 1 to 2 year growth in elementary, middle, and high school. Within 4 months, we're having, in elementary, we had 25% grow 1 to 2 years in the 4-month period. Is that because of kids overcoming some learning disability? I mean, to grow up to 2 years and 4 months, it's wonderful, but there's got to be, are we looking at extenuating circumstances that would cause a student to be behind like that and to make that kind of growth in that short period?
Because the teachers, because I have awesome teachers. I mean, I can tell you, we use research-based programs. We have our teachers follow a very systematic process. It's based on where the students are. So it could be that a student's needs were met, that we taught them reading strategies that I'll talk about in a minute, coping strategies. It could just be that they're missing a few skills. And so when they retested in mid-year, then those gaps were filled in, and then they could access and make sense of core curriculum or grade level curriculum. Again, we're individually plugging in skills, even though it's a small group and I may have 5 to 6 students, we work with the teachers based on what that student needs. So it just depends on the need of the student and where they are and what those prerequisite skills were missing. If they make into connection because that gap was filled, then they're gonna be able to grow.
Or that small group instruction?
Sir.
So and that was the same thing with middle and high school. Those 1 to 2 year jumps in 4 months is incredible, and it just makes me wonder that how have we missed plugging in those kids in the past? That's I always wondered, like, is there a learning disability, or was there something going on in the home that we weren't aware about that could impact?
I think all that impacts our students, but what I talked to the school board last year is prior to 2019, we didn't have systems and procedures in place. We didn't have interventionists at every campus where that was implemented with Dr. Kincannon and Dr. Kornblum's administration with their support. They've really supported my department and my program to make sure there's equitableness within all the campuses. And so within every campus, they're required to have a math teacher, ELAR, a reading teacher, and then the middle schools have to have the 2 reading and the 2 math in the high schools. So I think that's a big thing that now that we have systems and structures in place,
We're seeing that growth.
and hopefully, again, like I said, we have a large tier 3 population compared to what we should be, so we want to continue to see those numbers shrink.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Grant. Thank you.
Did you get your question
Oh,
answered?
sorry.
I've got a couple of questions too. So if a kid is a tier 3 student and do they test out of that?
So what we do is we look at the mid-year data. So at the beginning of the year, we use the screener, and the campuses have what's called a campus leadership team. And so that typically is the principal, the RTI coordinator, the instructional specialist, and they look at all the data, and then they tier students based on the data. So if I have a student that was below the 10th percentile, beginning of the year, maybe Feldstar 1 year, 2 years, but then the middle year, they're grown above the 25th percentile, they're progressing in their TCAs, then they can move from tier 3 to tier 2. So we have a calibration, we have kind of requirements on what it looks like to be tier 2 and tier 3. But the screening helps us move students. Then we may have students who were tier 2, but they've regressed because they're not they need more targeted intervention, so then we move them to tier 3. So it's an ever-flowing changing process. When you get to secondary and our students have failed multiple years in STAR, those are more stable and concrete, and those students typically stay in the SIT labs because that's my requirement, right? We know that they have several years of not passing that state assessment, so they need to stay in those labs and get that targeted intervention.
So to leave the tier, they only would leave in the middle of the year or the end of the year?
Typically, yes, sir.
Okay.
There are times that a student may move in because of our mobility rate, or a student may be concerned about a growth, especially K through 2. We have to screen those students just as well, and if a student K through 2 falls at risk for reading, we're required by law to provide intervention, just like we are for 3 through 8 for House Bill 1416. We're required by law to provide intervention. We're going to do it anyway because it's what's best for kids, right? But so you may have a student who is struggling in K1, 2, or any grade, and then that classroom teacher can call what's called a SAT meeting, a student's assistance team meeting, present their data, and if the data supports it, then during that semester, they could get placed in tier 2 or tier 3. But we're always looking at the data to drive where we place students.
Okay. So that was going to be my next question, is what we're doing to prevent kindergarten and first graders from actually going into tier 3.
So Dr. Kornblum or Ms. Logan could talk about that. Really, it's just strengthening our K1 and 2 core tier 1. But we'll also really, this past year, we've really communicated to the campuses. It's Texas Education Code 26008 that requires that we provide accelerated instruction to any kindergartner through second grade who falls at risk on the screener. And so past years, we didn't make our kindergarten teachers write what we call accelerated instruction plans, but this year we did. And so we're really holding those campuses accountable to pull those students, do the small group, if based on that screener, they show to have delays or gaps in their skills. Now, I will talk about that. That's my goal, to continue to strengthen in the future, because I need to do a better job of that. So in a minute, I'll talk about areas that we're growing or getting better.
One last one. How many years have we been tracking this data for this program?
This is my second full year. It's my probably 2.5, because we were on COVID, and then when we came back from COVID, we implemented our SIT classrooms in 2021, fall 2021.
Is it a district screener?
Yes, sir. That's what we use. We currently use Renaissance for 1st through 8th, and then for our 9th graders and our 10th graders at the high school, and then for our 9th and 10th graders at the high school, we use Reading Plus. And then kindergarten uses a screener called Texakia.
Mr. Patton, you are doing so well the whole time. But that last one, you squeaked in before Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant.
This goes way back to the beginning. First of all, this is extraordinary. I mean, this is extraordinary. Thank you for everything that you have done to build this model, the people that have supported. This is exactly what we need. Can you go back to the not go back, 80% of the average population is in Tier 1 nationally, correct?
That is a typical developing school. That's what, we have a strong system where
Right.
Tier 1 has been put in place for millions of years.
Right.
Then yes, that's what a typical school.
And our number is 50-something?
59.
58.
And again, we also have a high eco-dis population.
Oh, no, sure.
So that's always going to be a variable rate, and I'll talk about that at the end of my presentation. That our students, because they're economically disadvantaged, they're at risk. Waco may always be. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't use that as an excuse, and I can get on my soapbox really quick about John Hattie's research that talks about if intervention's done properly, it has a 1.27 standard deviation rate, which means that students who get intervention, it doesn't matter what type of home life they come from, that we should be able to close the gap at school if we do it the right way with systems. And so that's my spill to everybody. We're not going to use our students' eco-dis at risk as an excuse. We're going to close the gaps.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is you don't have to have a spiel. You just put these numbers on the board.
Well,
And my wonder is, if these continue, if we are able to provide the same support because we need more funding, state, my guess is, or my question is, how do you see that number climbing? It's, once you fall behind in high school, it's really hard to catch up.
well,
But if you start in kindergarten, like we are now, how long do you think it takes to get to 60, 70, 80% of our population? Because I'm with you. I think everybody has the capacity to learn if they're given the tools and the teachers that they need.
I wish I could give you a number, but I can't. I can tell you that I wish the gap was smaller than it was last year. We're maintaining, which is good. We're not going backwards. I don't have a number. I can tell you I'm going to continue to close it and make it more commensurate with national levels. I just think there's so many other extraneous. I mean, I can tell you the 0.3 students are the students who don't come to school, especially at high school. I mean, and I met with my secondary teachers this past week.
Yeah.
And we problem solved, what are the students who didn't grow? And every one of them are chronic absentees. So I asked them, what have you done? Have you contacted the parent? Have you contacted the principal? So there's other variables that I can't take into play, but I will continue to try.
And certainly, you look at the moving target. I'm on with Jonathan's question.
I'm not
The moving target.
He's not finished. Hold on.
That moving
write
target
write
of
it
a
down,
star
Mr.
has
Patton.
to
Write it down.
dramatically.
So my point wasn't to say, give us a number. The point is, you don't need a spiel, you don't need to come up with a number. If we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to get there, right? And that's where I commend you, and I commend you and everybody that comes with this, with a plan, with a system, with testing, with analysis. we can overcome the stigma that we are, not just the stigma, that the deficiencies that we've been able to provide our children in the past. We've been able to close that gap. And that's, if we can do that, that's the greatest thing that we can do, I think, in our district.
Dr. Kincannon.
Absolutely, this is one of the best programs that we have going, and one of the things that I'm most proud of. And I want to remind you that ESSER is going away, and we have those 13, 15 positions in ESSER that we want to keep. So we have hard decisions. There are some other positions in ESSER we want to keep too. Librarians are in there. It's part of our literacy plan. But we're going to have to cut something else to keep that. So just wanted to throw that in there. But this is a signature program that we've got to keep in place to keep growing our kids.
Mr. Patton, did you? Oh, yes, Dr. Cornblum.
To a couple of questions. So Mr. Patton asked the question about early on about closing the gaps, and were there significant, students in special education or different, things that contributed to that. So this is our intervention program, but in our programs in special education, that's been revamped too. So this is kind of separate. Our resource classes have been restructured. Resource and inclusion was kind of backwards 4 years ago, and so, or were kind of backwards, and so that had to be reformulated. Now, sometimes there are students who are in special education who might have a disability in math, but could be low in reading, and they might receive these services, but we also try within that special education realm to get their services through there because we do have that support, and there are so many students who don't receive the extra support through special education who need this. And so in most cases, no, but sometimes yes, every now and then.
We have to provide it for HB 1416. We have to provide accelerated instruction, and those minutes cannot be included in the IP time. So that's where Tier 2 and those classroom teachers come in and provide that small group instruction. At the high school, currently, all freshmen are put in sit labs, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, because we want those kids to graduate from high school, and we want them to pass the STAR. So it really depends. So they get intervention, because we're required by law to provide it. But as far as the targeted Tier 3, if they're that delayed, then we try to get them to look at their IEP, look and see if they need specially designed instruction.
And then, Mr. Ochoa, you were asking about the kindergarten and first grade. Well, to Dr. Kincannon's point, part of those 15 positions was for the reading recovery. And so that helps in that first grade. And though reading recovery serves a small number of students, it serves the students who are most significantly behind. But the beauty of it, though, is then those teachers are so well trained in intervening, then they can be a benefit to the rest of the campus when they aren't working with their first grade students. So that is a part of that funding of those 15 from ESSER. And this year, that training continues throughout the district from our lead teachers who went through it the very first year. And then one more point that Mr. Grant, when you were asking about closing the gap and at high school, how those numbers look, and Ms. Parnell was talking about chronic absenteeism. And I'm just trying to illustrate the systems that have been put in place to link all of this stuff together, because it's not just intervention.
Right,
if you
right.
remember Denise Bell talking about our cohort meetings, to where you have people from our special programs together talking about, okay, this student hasn't been attending school, they're doing this, they're doing that. You have people from the English Learners Department in there, special education, their case managers, to say, okay, who's touched base with them? What's happening? Why are they not coming to school? Who's going to do what? And trying to assign actions to those people so that we can find them and get them back in so that they can get the help and don't become dropouts. So intervention is wrapped into many other things and a larger system. So, and she does an awesome job. So I'm not going to hijack your report.
I know we're going long, but I got to.
Okay, and well, let's let Mr. Davis go first because he was waiting, and then we'll let you, Mr. Grant.
Okay, I just wanted to know, I'm happy to see the growth. I wanted to know how many students are catching up to grade level. I see it's like 1.5 years of growth. So does that mean more students are getting back on grade level, or are they just, because I know In the past, we talked about students were really, really behind, multiple grade levels. So I was just wondering, are we closing the gaps in that sense too, or how are we doing?
So it would depend on individual students as far as
Yeah.
growth, where they were at the beginning.
Mm,
But it's always growth, right?
sure.
So they're always growing close to
sure.
first grade level, and we're closing the gap anytime they make any type of progress.
Yeah.
So yes, sir.
But I was just wondering, do you have a ballpark idea of how many students have reached grade level in this period of a few months?
Well, I can tell you, we can refer back to the intervention right here, this movement. So I can tell you tier 3, that 147 students are now on tier 1, which means
Gotcha.
they're commensurate to their peers as far as the percentiles and TCAs.
Mm.
So I can tell you that's a ballpark figure, that 147 students are now on grade level.
That's awesome. Awesome. And I was wondering, you said the 72 sit teachers, they have each about 40 to 50 students that they're serving. Is that ideal, or would we want more teachers to serve that amount of students?
So that's based on average. So our high school students and our teachers will have more, and I'll talk about how we work that program in a minute. They typically average 10 to 15 per class, where elementary is 5 to 6 per group. So elementary is around 30 to 40, and then our high schools, of course, they have it by period.
Mhm.
So they have 15 times 7, so we're in the 7-year. We try to keep them at 90. Secondary, not just.
But where we are currently is ideal for the system that you
So I'm
guys.
going to tell you, it's ideal. I will always take more sit teachers,
Gotcha.
specifically at the high school, fund them, because you're talking about 15 students that are unsuccessful, are behind. So we can always take more. But I know based on funding and where we're at,
Yeah.
the whole other issues. So I don't want to say we're where we need to be, because I will always take more. But because we always, the smaller the groups are and the more targeted the intervention, the quicker we're going to close the gaps.
We do have a grade equivalent report that I gave you all last week, but I could send that back out around again so you could see by the K-1-2. I think that's what we gave you. Okay, did we give through third grade, second or third grade? But it's grade equivalent, so I can send that back around to you guys if you want to take a look at that.
The percentage of students per grade that are on the grade level.
First, second, and third, excuse me.
Mr. Grant, thank you for waiting patiently.
Yeah, I hate to date myself. I am the second oldest person on our board, but we're being asked pretty much to do a Sophie's choice, right? Pick which child we want to let live, and with this ESSER funding, with not having the funding that we need from the state, there will come a time that we're going to have to make a choice on where to invest our money, even in this program. If we have to cut 6 of these teachers, do you cut them from high school? Because like in an ER, it's late, it's down the road, or do we cut them evenly across the board because that's justice? And it just pains me to know that we are being forced to make some of these decisions because of money. And
I can tell you there is hope in state comp funding. So my hope is that my state comp funding will work out, but I can't promise you. I mean, we don't know. We don't even know state comp funding for this year. Ms. Davis could speak more to that. But that's my hope, but I can't promise you that. As far as that, I would have to look at the data. I would have to look at the number of students by grade level to be able to tell you which grades need it more, and then the growth, the gaps amongst grade level. So I would really need to research that and look at.
well, I'm saying I don't want you to have to make that choice, right? If we weren't put in this position to pick which child to let live, we wouldn't be put in this position, and it's traumatic. I mean, that's what these financial decisions mean for our children.
Thank you. That's it. That's it, right? Hard decisions.
Mr. Ochoa had a question. Oh,
I'm done.
I hope you'll forgive me for asking this. I have a wife that does it, and the last thing she wants to talk about when I get home is Waco ISD stuff. How does it different from a kid doing reading recovery as opposed to just being with a sit
Tier
teacher? What's the difference?
So our tier 3 teachers, who are also reading and recovery teachers, use a program called LLI, which is level literacy. It involves phonics, it involves word work, comprehension, word identification, so it puts it all together. So that's usually, it's based on the BAS. It's usually in groups of 3 to 5 to 6. Reading recovery is one-on-one. So again, they're using the same principles, the same practices that they've learned through reading recovery when they pull those LLI groups. And that's what was so amazing about training these teachers. If we can't continue reading recovery, guess what? We've just trained 13 teachers to become better reading teachers. And they're building those principles and embedding that within LLI. So that the difference is just the one-on-one versus the small group.
Is there one program that seems to work better than the other?
They're both great.
Okay.
Again, I have amazing elementary and secondary reading teachers. So, I mean, it goes back to the teacher and their expertise. Some of our teachers deviate, and that's okay because they're experienced tenured teachers, and they know what the student needs. So they may deviate a little bit from LLI. If the student needs more phonics, they may pull in more phonics. So it really just depends on the teacher and the program. But again, I think they're all great because my teachers are great.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Patton, thank you.
It's written down.
Good job.
SIT teachers are doing tier 3.
Yes, sir.
How many per group? Is it the 3 to 5 that it used to be for tier 3?
Well, so it depends. It depends. It depends on the number of students in a grade level, depends on the number of students at a school. So there's not a set number. The state of Texas tells us that we, for grades 3 through 10 who have FeldStar, based on HB 1416, tells us we have to have a 4-to-1 ratio. I can tell you that's not happening because we don't have enough teachers for that. So we can get a waiver, the parent can waive that. So we try to keep the groups, like at the high school that I'll talk about in a minute, no bigger than 7, because we do a rotation system. So they pull a small group, they do direct explicit instruction, while the other half of the class is on Reading Plus or iReady. So we try to keep the groups as small as we can. Elementary, it depends on the number of students on the level, because they usually pull by grade based on what's called BAS testing, which is a one-on-one, kind of like a running record to see what lexile or reading level they're on. So it depends on how many students are on that level in that grade. We do. We do called reading records, and then some do running records. It depends on LLI. It's embedded every 2 weeks. We do the BAS testing, which that's basically it 3 times a year. That's another point in data that we use when we're tiering our students.
So we do running records on every student in elementary?
Well, we do them in tier 3 because that's a part of the LLI. That's a part of the progress monitoring. For tier 1, it would be probably just the 3 times a year during BAS testing.
Because you know, Courtney, you and I used to have to do running records at our elementary, and every kid had to. I mean, it was really a great tool because every teacher knew where the kids were reading at.
When I talk about what we're growing on, when this summer, that's one of the things we're going to focus on with our tier 2 teachers as far as strengthening their abilities to give the BAS testing, to do those running records when they're pulling small group. So another growth measure that we use besides Renaissance is we're looking at fall interim data and spring interim data. And so I'm not sure if you're familiar with the interim. Ms. Bell presents on that. But that's a STAR-like test that is given or developed by the state. And so based on the fall interim, please remember, a fall interim covers all the standards within a grade. So a lot of the stuff that's on this test hasn't been taught yet to our students. So based on fall interim, our students who showed growth, again, my goal is growth measure. I want our students to show growth. So they could go to do not approach as low to do not approach as high. That's considered growth. They could go do not meet high to approaches, and that's growth. So we want all of our students to grow. So in 4th grade for reading, 42% of our tier 3 students met the growth measure. In math, it was 22%. Reading was 26%. Math was 39%. 6th grade, reading was 27%. Math was 47%. 7th grade was 46% of our students in reading. Again, not all the standards taught showed the growth measure. Math was 38%. 8th grade, 49% of our students in fall met the growth measure. Math was 56%. 9th graders were 20%, and our math was at 34%. Again, this is just one way to show that our students are closing the gap, that they can progress on that grade level curriculum. And again, just please remember, this is a test based on in which not all the curriculum is taught. So again, I'm pleased. on that. And we have spring interim that they're in the middle of doing. I had my ELAR spring scores, but I didn't have math. I can tell you that every SIT teacher has a SIT tracker, and on that SIT tracker, they put their Renaissance data, they put fall interim, and they put spring interim. And any Tier 3 student who did not show growth for fall and or spring, they have to come up with the action plan. And so they're sending me their action plan on what they're going to do and what TEKS or standards they're targeting to help sure all of our students show growth. Another measure we, of course, use when we're looking at students and tiering is STAR data. So this is based on last year's STAR. And remember, the state, remember what the state did, right? They increased the scaled scores for all of our students. So our Tier 3 students, it's even more difficult for them to show growth because the scaled score, they may have grown 400 points in their scaled score, and these students still didn't meet the growth measure. And so what I probably will do next time is show you by scaled score their growth. Because again, we had students who grew 400 points in a scaled score, but we didn't get the accountability point for that because they did not show growth. So fourth grade, 52% of our Tier 3 students met the growth measure on STAR. Math, 38% did. Fifth grade, 55% did. In reading, 57% did in math. Sixth grade, 40% met the growth measure on STAR. In reading, 68% of our Tier 3 students met the growth measure in math. Seventh grade, 66% of our students met the growth measure. In reading, 62% did in math. Eighth grade, 58% met in reading, 60% did in math. Ninth grade, reading was 32%. But in math, 72% of our students in our math lab met the growth measure. And in 10th grade, 52%. Just a little more data to dig in for you that's a little more narrow. So we use our program at secondary called Reading Plus. And again, as we mentioned, our high school students, our secondary students have years of delay of reading difficulties. Many of these students were in elementary and secondary where Tier 3 wasn't provided to them. So we use what's called Reading Plus. Again, the teacher spends their time with the student doing direct teach in a small group, while the other half of the students are on Reading Plus. Same thing for math. The teacher does direct teach. The other half of the students are on a program called iReady. So this is our growth based on the Reading Plus Insights Assessment, which is another data point we use. So we currently have, if you look at the first column, it's the number of students. So the first one has 1,340 students are currently using Reading Plus. The student actives below that are the number of lessons the student has completed on Reading Plus. So we use this for when, but we're using a different program that's more TEKS aligned. So we have a lot of students who have completed 1 to 20 lessons. Then you get to the 21 lessons to 40 lessons. We have 819. 41 to 60 is 514. So the first group is the number of lessons. Then you get to the second. So the students who have completed 1 to 20 lessons have increased their reading fluency gain by 4 words. So that's what we're really trying to target at the high school, is besides the fact that the students' reading proficiencies are low, a lot of times their comprehension is impeded because their reading fluency is so slow and labored. Another reason why we use Reading Plus is because it builds their stamina. This program works on reading proficiency, and it highlights the words in its long passages to build up their reading stamina, because these are students who haven't been successful, and to get a STAR passage in front of them and read that entire STAR passage is exhausting. So that's another reason why we use this. So if you look, again, students who have completed 21 to 40 have gained 27 reading words per minute, and then you go all the way up to students who have completed 101 lessons. Their silent reading fluency gains have been 77 words. Then the exciting part is the reading level gains. So again, if you look, it builds up on the lessons, but you get 41 students who have completed 41 to 60 lessons. So again, that's 514 students who have completed 41 to 61 lessons have gained 1 year, 7 months. Then you get to 61 to 80 lessons. Again, that's 208 students have gained 2 years. 81 to 100, 70 students have gained 2.6 years. And then we have 31 students who have gained 3.6 years growth. This is at the district.
Is it possible that we could maybe for next board meeting or board packet, have one of these lessons just put in so we can see what it looks like?
I could print off the skills assessment lesson, but as far as getting on the computer, I could maybe screenshot it. I can look into
I would like to see what, I mean, we've got 806 kids at lessons 1 through 20. I think it would be interesting for the board to see what it really is, what it really is happening with that.
We can send you some screenshots so you can see it.
Can we do that,
I think
please?
a better idea would get a camera and let Mr. Patton go through a few lessons and
You can come observe if you want.
wind walks where we go into the secondary campuses to calibrate student engagement and teacher engagement.
Ms. Parnell could take you on a tour and show you.
We actually have some coming up next week.
Yeah.
get you a login.
The other thing to remember in the 1 through 20, so we use Reading Plus, but some of our students may be getting accelerated instruction or intervention in math. So they may be live in the program, but for this semester, they're getting math intervention. So that's why we have students in the range that don't have the lessons. So this is middle school in general. I'm not going to go over all of it, but you can see the number of students, the lessons, the reading fluency gains, and then you can see the average gains. So again, students that have done 21 to 40 have gained 1 year. Again, this is just for fall. 46 to 60, 1.7, and so on. And so students who have completed, we have 30 students at the middle school who have done 101 lessons, and these are in our SIT labs, have gained 3.7 years. High school, again, the Reading Plus is the same way. It's used during WIN for some of our students, but it's used in our freshman SIT labs. So if you look at the growth, so we have about 7 students who have gained 1.6 years, 37 who have gained 1.7, 41 who have gained 1.5, and 0.9. So again, that's our high school. Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Grant, thank you.
This is all in one semester, right? Students either do 1 to 20 or 101 plus.
Correct. We do an insights assessment just like the other one, beginning of year and mid-year, and this is based on the January mid-year assessment growth.
So I'm curious why the 502, if it's the same time, haven't had 101 lessons. Is it because they don't need it as much? Is it because they're not as far behind? Is it because they don't want to do it?
So these are students who are enrolled in the program, but not all of these students are in the SIT lab. So they may be getting math accelerated instruction, they may be having to get US history, they may be having to get biology. So it just depends on the need of the student. Many of our students have to have 3 or more courses of end-of-course accelerated instruction. So it's the number of students enrolled in the program, but it doesn't mean they're actually sitting in a SIT lab.
So the ones that get the most tests or the most reading lessons are more than likely behind in more areas.
Correct. Or they're the ones sitting in the SIT lab who have their SIT lab 45 minutes 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Whereas we have. Correct, right. Well, they're required to do so many lessons per week. Like that's a part of our SIT expectation. The teacher does the lesson, and then the student has to do so many lessons per week at 80% or above.
More lessons they get.
Correct. Correct, right. Yes, sir. And again, some of these students aren't in the SIT labs. They may be in WIN, which is only 30 minutes a day. And they may not be in WIN for reading. They may be in WIN for algebra.
Ms. Burnell, I have a question that I have been waiting, actually I have 3 that I have been waiting for a long time, and I am just going to go ahead and ask it. How long is a session, a SIT, or a lesson for the Tier 3? In elementary school, are we talking 20 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes? How long is a session?
So for Tier 3, what we consider research-based is 4 times a week for 30 to 45 minutes. So it depends on the campus. We have some campuses that have a larger amount.
Yeah,
so
teachers.
they do 30 minutes.
Yep.
4 times a week. We have some campuses who can do 45 minutes 4 times a week.
Great.
Secondary, it's all 40, it's a class period.
Yeah, class period. Perfect. Have you been tracking, I know that reading and math are very intertwined because a lot of the math is literally word problems. But I was wondering, I know beginning of the year, we seem to have a lot of kids who are needing Tier 3 intervention, even a significant number of kids needing Tier 2. Do you guys track Slumber Slide? Is that?
Well, that's funny you talked about that because I am going to talk about that. But yes, ma'am, I do. I am. At the end, I'll talk about what my data has shown and that we have a bigger summer slide than most. So based on my data from this past year, our students will grow. But after the summer, for the beginning of the year, they've either regressed back to mid-year. Some of them even regress back to
All the way to the
entire
beginning. That's what I would see with our book club kiddos, is they would get up to grade level, be ready for their next grade, and then over that 2.5 months or 3 months of summer, they would regress 2 to 3 years, and then it was, so, they'd make the gains, and then they'd fall way back down, and yet they're in a higher grade level, so it just, that summer slide is really
Yes, ma'am, it does impact us.
wide.
One of our focuses that we'll talk about at the end of this, that we're working to.
And my third question is, I'm looking at students who are doing 4 months of fairly intense Tier 3 intervention with highly trained teachers, and they're only getting 0 to 3 months of growth on top of their direct instruct in their classroom. Are those students being identified or recommended for special education?
So that's what, they have to have SAT meetings every 3 to 4 weeks. And so they reviewed the students who don't make progress. And so yes, the recommendation is that they refer the student for special education testing.
Okay.
The other thing we look at is attendance. And I can tell you there's a high correlation between our students who don't grow, who don't come to school.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Those are my questions.
So I've shown you lots of great data. Again, I'm proud of this data. Our teachers are working hard. I have a great team, but we know we need to get better. So some of the things we're doing to improve and get better is we've really worked hard this year in aligning our Tier 3 instruction to core standards to build connections and increase the generalization of skills by focusing on the YAG, which is the year at a glance. That's what the general ed classroom teachers teach too. And so we've worked with our SIT teachers, and they are to pull the YAG, look at the grade level, look at the content, what's being taught in that classroom. Okay, so those are the skills that I need to scaffold down, and those are the prerequisite skills I'm plugging in, because we want our students to be able to generalize their skills. When we do our professional development, we work with them, pulling the YAG, looking at the students' data, what are the missing skills, and what are you going to teach? Another thing that we continue to work on that I've talked to you about is explicit instruction. That's based on Anita Archer's work, where there's 16 characteristics. And so when we do our walkthroughs with our SIT teachers, we're looking for our explicit instruction characteristics, which is frequent feedback, communication, the pacing. And so what we have done this year is we allowed each SIT teacher to choose one explicit instruction technique that they want to focus on and that they're improving or implementing in their classroom. And then we have PLCs throughout the year where those SIT teachers collaborate based on the explicit instruction that they chose to talk about how they've increased student engagement. Elementary focus, what we really focused on are strategies to teach and model strategies for Tier 3 students to think about reading. Again, we're working on helping our students comprehend, decode words, but we've got to teach them, what do you do when you come to a word you don't know? And so we've worked with our SIT teachers who are now also training the campuses on that top picture you can see, the strategies to think about reading. So again, our teachers are modeling and teaching our students what to do when you come to a word you don't know. And then we're working with the classroom teachers because we need them to generalize this into the core classroom. Another thing we did, thanks to Dr. Kincannon, brought our attention to are some decodable readers. And so we have 4 elementary students, 100 students are piloting the home decodable reading packets. And so this is a little reader that the parent can scan the back of it, a QR code, and it does a little lesson for the parent and the student based on the phonics skill. We're also added the iReady's pathway, which is something that we did within C&I department in general, based on feedback from our campus principals, our teachers. The program we used last year called Renaissance didn't have the rigor. So based on their input, we went to an iReady program, and that's much more rigorous and much more aligned. So in addition to what they're getting with the teacher, they're also getting the iReady's pathways that focuses on reading and math. And it's based on a diagnostic. So again, they're plugging in those missing skills as well as the teacher. As Dr. Kornblum talked about, we continue to do coaching for our SIT teachers. All of the elementary SIT teachers have had one-on-one coaching, modeling from Warren and Associates. And they, again, spend a day with them, watch them teach, model for them, give them feedback. As I explained to the teachers, they're amazing teachers, but we all need to grow and get better at our craft, right? So what can we do to get better? And we also have our 13 reading recovery teachers meeting with the lead reading recovery teachers once a month, working on behind the glass where they watch the students and get coaching on that. We've really focused this year on elementary with our August PD on the writing and how we can improve our writing within the LLI. Middle school, again, our tier 3 students continue to receive reading and math for intervention 5 days a week. This year, we staggered win times, which win stands for what I need when I need it. It's where all secondary gets their tier 2 intervention. So we staggered it this year. So we have a 6th grade win time, a 7th grade win time, an 8th grade win time. So our students who need both reading and math aren't losing electives, because we know how important electives are to these students. We continue to do weekly walks by our secondary intervention instructional specialist, and we continue to have those monthly PLC teachers with our PLCs with our secondary teachers to review their data. High school interventions, we continue to have that strategic math lab. That's something that we started last year. And again, our freshman students get the math lab in conjunction with their regular algebra class. But this year, we've really worked with those teachers on focusing on the alignment to what they're doing in the classroom, but also incorporating some math manipulatives. So you can see that's a student at Waco High using algebra tiles. And so we saw lots of success with that. It's really helping them bring that concrete to the abstract for algebra. Our reading 1 and 2 labs continue. And what we really focus on our high school, again, is just really reinforcing the growth. And you can see some of the things our teachers do. They recognize students who have read so many words. They have contests between the class periods. That's actually a student who completed 100 lessons, and he actually passed the English 2-star, or English 1-star in December. So we're excited. So again, those students, again, have had years of feeling unsuccessful. And so we really work with our SIT teachers that they're the ones that are building the success. They're the ones that are the lifeline for those students and really build those students up. And then we continue to do our weekly walks with them. A big focus for this year for me has been tier 2 interventions. Now that we have tier 3 aligned, I've kind of already talked about that the district purchased the iReady pathways for all elementaries. Again, that provides the targeted lessons for students in tier 2 and tier 3, targeting the prerequisite skills. We also have our lead reading recovery teachers are coaching 21 teachers on 4 campuses, Parkdale, Dean Highlands, South Waco, and Mountain View. So they're going in, working with classroom teachers on how to pull and do small group or guided reading. So that's really been kind of a neat focus this year. We'll continue to expand that next year. But again, what we have found is we have brand new teachers. We have alt-cert teachers who have never been trained on the strategies on what to do when you pull a small group to do reading. And so those lead reading recovery teachers are going in and coaching those 21 teachers on tier 2 instruction.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Kincannon, this is for you. Our transformation schools that are coming in, do those teachers have this level of instruction on the reading recovery and what you're describing? Has that been mirrored at Transformation Waco?
Courtney, take it.
They had the autonomy to choose, and one chose not to do it. The other 2 did it, and one chose not to do it this year. So we currently have 1 campus now doing it.
So we're going to look
You
at
have to catch them all up.
and that's going to be in one summer, right?
But we're also looking at doing some summer differentiated professional development. We really want to look at our elementary teachers and divide them into novice, skilled, and master guided reading teachers, or not just guided reading, but proficient strategic reading teachers. Do they need phonics? Do they need comprehensive vocabulary? Teach those classroom teachers how to pull small group back. Because that's what I've kind of found in my data, is our kids are making great gains in tier 3, and they go to tier 2, and they're kind of stagnant. So I started doing some walkthroughs, and I had some ahas that I take ownership for, that I hadn't really set up the systems and structures for training in tier 2. So we're going to get that fixed and build that up.
And Ms. Parnell has already began working on staffing for federal title programs and state comp.
Will we have reading
Transformation
recovery
Waco.
at those transformation schools?
So I think it just depends on the funding and then the principal, and the number of students. So, but yes, we are we have met with the TW campuses, and we have explained our model, and we have explained the campuses who have not followed our model that we need them to build the staffing to follow our model.
So come this summer, they're not going to have that that option to opt in or opt out.
Correct. Right.
So there's
That's
going
what she
to,
said. They have to get the staffing aligned to our staffing plan.
so it's going
We've
to
been
be
saying that since December, that
be a lot of,
there's gonna be a lot of catching up and
a
training
lot of
to do. Yes.
TD that those folks are going to move. Good.
Our secondary two-tier intervention, so we continue to increase on those targeted skills for win for retesters. And I'm excited to say our December retesters, our biology and our US history doubled as far as those retesters. Algebra pretty much stayed the same. We know we still need to work on English 1 and 2. We built, this is exciting to me, we're being proactive at secondary, specifically high school. We've built some courses in a program called APEX, for first-time testers for Algebra 1 and English 2. So based on the interim data and the TCA data from fall, we got that from the ISs, we have these courses built. So freshmen who are in WIN classes can work on the APEX courses to have those Algebra 1, English 1, English 2 standards retaught that they weren't proficient on. If the student was proficient on it, then they're breezing through the courses, they're great. Doesn't hurt, right, to be exposed to something. So we're really trying to be proactive. Again, 8th grade science and social studies, they're pulling those 8th graders. And then we also have started APEX courses for TSI. So kind of what y'all talked about, we're doing, again, I'm proud of our growth. No, we have ways we need to improve, but we also want to continue to build foundations at home. We know, again, based on the data, that our students regress in the summer, but our kids regress more than most. So some of the things we're doing is our parent literacy night. We actually have one tonight. Where Elaine and Deborah, our lead reading recovery teachers, are bringing parents in. We have a K through 2 group and a 3 through 5 where they come in and they give them specific skills, concrete things they can do with their children to build those skills. We give them free books. We give them literacy bags that have sandpaper, a magma doodle, crayons, all the things they can do to implement literacy skills at home. I've already talked about the decodable reader home packets that we're doing. Again, we want our students to read at home. We want to build our parents with those skills to help improve the proficiencies.
That's 100 students?
That's 100 student at 4
And
campuses.
they're personalized to the student's level, so they get a pack of books that's just for them based on where their reading level is.
Is this at like one school or is this across the district?
4 schools. We did South Waco, Dean Highland, Mountain View, and Parkdale.
Are we going to increase that?
So our-
These decodables?
Yes. So our plan is to send more kind of into that. Our Camp Read a Lot is something we started last year where we send home reading logs. We sent home over 20,000 books last summer, 1st through 5th grade for our non-TW campuses. And again, we're encouraging students to read at home, right? We've got to build up those proficiencies. So we're going to embed some of those decodable readers within the summer Camp Read a Lot.
They're expensive. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, I don't remember the cost. It was it was millions
Free,
to
but
do.
it's $10,000 worth of material.
Yeah.
State comp?
Yes,
Federal?
sir, they
Title
donated.
I?
It's a pilot program. So I gave these specific students beginning of the year data and mid-year data. And so then they're tracking their progress, and I'll give them their end of the year screening data. And based on that, they're letting us pilot the program for free. So we got $10,000 worth of materials for 100 students free. They get 3 different packages to take home. So if I'm Courtney and I'm reading on a 1st grade level, they gave me decodables on Courtney's level. They might have done something different for Mr. Patton. So it's individual based on the student.
So if the data shows that this is working, we will continue.
So yes, I used some of the state comp money from last year to do the Camp Read a Lot.
And you said you don't know about this year's state comp yet?
Well, that as far as the overall specific amount, but we know our general budget. So I had to budget for this year. So I have money set aside for summer school, for night school within summer programs that we set aside already. And as far as our budgeting. Again, the Camp Read a Lot, we're going to continue that. Talked about sending the reading logs home with the packets, with activities. We also had our librarians and our SIT teachers go to the community meal sites and do story time to help build the comprehension and just that proficiency. So that's it. So again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the success of our intervention. And we will continue to work hard and continue to close those gaps. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Ochoa.
Is the STAR REN, is that the main tool we use to measure growth for students?
So when we talk about growth, we use multiple data points. That's important to me. So REN is our data, or our screener for 1st through 8th. So it's one data point. The other data point we use is the BAS testing. We use interim, we use TCA, so it's kind of our overall, because it's just a
I don't
screener,
know.
right? It's just a little picture of the student on a 20-minute test. So that's why it's so important we look at multiple sources of data when we're looking at students and their growth. But REN was based, the growth I gave you was based on REN specifically,
What is TCA?
taught curriculum assessment.
So my concern was going to be that if the state is continuing to change the way they score testing, how that would affect us.
So the way we're working on that is the iReady program that we bought. This is another reason why we bought this. It's constructed as the STAR is. And so now that STARS went to online learning, iReady's online. And so the constructed responses, the dragging, all the stuff that's embedded in STAR is also built in the platform of iReady. So we're really trying to transition them. We also talked to our SIT teachers and our Tier 2 teachers about getting the students online to do the practice test, to learn the tools. We really worked hard specifically at secondary, getting them to use text-to-speech for our students who have reading difficulties, getting our students to practice that on TCAs and interim, which we really haven't focused on in years past. We want them to do it throughout the year. So that's how we're kind of transitioning to the online as far as intervention.
Is the iReady coordinated to TEKS,
It's aligned.
or is it a national?
It's national, but it has different states, and so the one we're using is the Texas version that is aligned.
Awesome. You've done a great job, Ms. Parnell.
Again, Dr. Buchanan and Dr. Kornblum's support, we couldn't do it without them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Purnell. Lots of great information and encouraging information. We'll move on to item number 11, announcements. Ms. Cox?
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Buchanan, trustees. Dr. Buchanan already highlighted the Black History Month event still ahead. I do hope you've gotten to enjoy one of the amazing programs that our staffs have put on. And if you haven't seen it, our Dean Highland Steppers that were on the morning news this week, those students got up early along with Mrs. Sled, and I'm sure a lot of other staff, but my week was made watching them on the morning news. So tomorrow night, I want to encourage Waco ISD fans and Trojan fans alike to make the trip south on I-35 to Temple High School to cheer on the Trojans in their area round basketball playoff matchup versus Georgetown High School. You know they'll be traveling north. We got to travel south. The game's at 7 p.m. And I should say, go to basketball. If you don't have the hottest ticket in town, which is actually the Friday night tickets for Hillcrest PDS, Mrs. Hoover and team's production of the Music Man Jr. performances started tonight. I know tomorrow night is sold out. Mrs. Dean has made that very clear. No more tickets are available for tomorrow night. Saturday, there are just a handful still available for their 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. show. Saturday, you're also able to visit the UHS Performing Arts Center, where the stage will be filled with 4th and 5th graders from across the district and their joyful sounds at the Waco ISD Children's Music Festival at 2 p.m. Friday, March 1st, skipping ahead, is a student holiday staff development day that's going to send us off into spring break, March 4th through 8th. And to add another exclamation point on the previous discussion about the importance of voting, primary election voting is underway currently. The final day for early voting is March 1st. The election day for primary elections is Tuesday, March 5th while we're on break. So no one has a reason to not go out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Those tickets for Music Man are going for $1,200 a piece on Ticketmaster.
I haven't heard what the black market is. Maybe Mr. Hoover knows a little more than I do.
All right.
Madam President, one
Yes,
thing
Mr.
before we
Davis.
go, I just want to say Happy Black History Month. I like every year to highlight those African American trustees who paved the way for the betterment of our community, starting with Reverend Robert Gilbert, Dr. Emma Louise Harrison, Reverend John L. Meshack, Mr. Billy Barrett, Mrs. Coquee Gibson, Mrs. Juanica Hammett, Mr. Alex Williams, Mr. Sammy Smith, Mr. Norman Manning, Mr. Keith Guillory, and Mr. Jeremy Davis. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say I saw the Dean Highland STEP program on and just thought it was so cute. I loved it. They did such a great job. So I'm so proud of those kiddos. And with that, we're adjourned.